Well, hey guys, it's Pastor Jordan here, and as we're going to continue our sermon commentary in this series talking about holiness, I've got two incredible guests here. Could you guys introduce each other, or introduce yourselves?
We'll introduce ourselves. My name is Erica Callie, and I teach theater at YAYASAN.
Yes.
And my name is Mike Callie, and I'm the dance teacher at YAYASAN.
I love it. And these guys have been an incredible part of our community here in TC, just team members involved in a lot of ways. And I'm happy that I get to have you guys here, part of this sermon commentary.
We are glad to be here.
Yeah,
We're
this
excited.
is so exciting.
Thank you.
So we're going to get started. We're going to jump in. We'll start playing the first clip.
Kind of creates this idea like you're better than other people because of your inability to refrain from the wrong types of choices. But I would say that understanding holiness as refraining from the wrong choices is really only half of the idea, because in all actuality, holiness is much more about making the right choices. You know, it breaks my heart when I meet Christians that treat their faith and treat the work of God in their life as if they're just holding on until they can get to heaven.
Right.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. I mean, for me, this part, it makes me think that, you know, we are created to be in this world, not just, you know, trying to get through it, weathering the storm, pulling up our collar against our, around our neck and trying to get through it.
Yeah.
But we are here to be living in amongst all of it. We are broken. The world is broken, but we are called to be holy in that. So it's not just trying to get through it to the other side. It's like, who are we called to be in community, in amongst the people we're around, in where God has put us today.
Yeah.
And yeah, that
I love that.
really
I love that
spoke to
point.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good.
Yeah, for me, this resonates so much because growing up in my faith tradition, it was like, to me, holiness was checking off the list.
Yeah.
It was like following all the rules, making sure you're doing all the right thing. And if you're doing it right, then you're holy,
Then you're holy,
and
totally.
Right.
the world can see how holy you are.
Yeah. Right.
So just listening to this, it's like, yes, it's like who we are here too. It's like that we, not me. Like it's not about us, and it's not about me making the checklist of I need to make sure I'm doing this the right way.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it's showing up in all of those little moments day to day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's so beautiful. You know, because when we think about holiness for us, like even as we come from any faith background, because the reality is that most faiths kind of have their own definition or standard of holiness, right? But like when you think about, this is the question I thought of when I watched this part, right? How do you measure holiness? And according to who measures holiness? You know,
Right,
because like
right.
maybe from where you learned what holiness might look like from wherever you are coming from could be totally different from
Yeah.
me. And same with
Right,
Erica.
right.
And it's so it's so funny that like this word holiness, I think, is so ethereal for people. Yet people
Yes.
try to make it so
Right.
so absolute.
Right.
Right?
Right. Because if you think about it, it's being like, it's like, how can we be like God? Well, it's not, we have to do these things,
Yeah.
but he's calling us to be holy so that we could be like him. We could operate in the world as Jesus did.
Totally.
We can be serving others and showing up
Yeah.
in the very best way
Yeah, totally.
that can serve and give
I love
it,
that.
it's not having, like you said, it's not checking off things on a list.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
it's being as godlike as we can. And of course this isn't
Yeah.
easy, but it's okay because
Yeah.
we have grace and
Totally.
and
And God's love and just how he's like I see you wanted to add, so I think I'll just
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just gonna say it's that idea of the perfection, because we know that God is perfect.
Yeah.
So I think that's where my understanding of it growing up was, to be holy is you're trying to be perfect.
Wow.
But like, and of course, this is my Enneagram 9 wing 1 coming out,
Yeah,
that
for sure.
perfectness, trying to,
Yeah.
but it's we're never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So we know if we try to reach perfection, we're just going to fail.
Yeah,
so then
for sure.
that's when the self-loathing comes in and all of that. So it's, I don't know, just knowing that we can look at being holy as it's not just something for us to do, but it's something that we do together, and it's something that we build up others, and by showing God's love and grace to others, that is also being holy. And
this is what Jesus did when he came to the earth, right?
Totally.
He's saying, wait a second, it's not you have to do this. It's actually, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
So he gave us a very clear picture of, and it is opposite to so much of the way, like you were saying, let's be perfect. Let's follow these rules. Let's look really, really nice and clean and perfect. No, I mean, it's actually getting into all of the grittiness of humanity and saying,
yes,
well, how do we show up as Christ-like as we possibly can be in this moment?
So right there, what I think that you guys just talk between yourselves, and I'm just listening. I feel like I'm just flying the wall. Just like, what are you guys talking about? Because I love that you brought in two things: Jesus and holiness through community. Because when we think about Jesus, most people's normal expectation or thought is just this holy, perfect being.
Right.
Yet why would a person that's so holy and perfect be so okay around so many people that are broken, so many people that don't have things well? And I think I love that you guys talked about holiness through community, because I think the standard, let's say we use the standard that you were talking about, where faith is just this, it's like checking off these lists, right? Normally I found that when I live my life through that way, I'm very pompous. I have a very big attitude. I'm self-righteous. I look down on people because they don't match my standard. And so I isolate myself. And I pursue this path of like, I am going to be number one and I'll show you.
Right. Exactly.
But I love how you guys brought both Jesus and community, because Jesus, who is the epitome of holiness, and he, in 100, even though he was when he came 100% human, he was still 100% God. So if we look at someone that is Jesus as 100% holy, he was so okay being around unholy, sinful, broken things. And it's so cool to see how holiness can kind of come through that. You know? And because something I thought about this way, like even thinking about most people's kind of expectation of holiness, right? Most people, let's say, we go back to the whole checklist concept, right? So most people might have their own concept of what holiness looks like for them. But it's so funny how there's still going to be areas in our life that are still technically considered unholy from some perspectives. You could be someone that doesn't smoke, doesn't party, doesn't drink. You are abstinent from sex. You don't cuss, any of that stuff. But your thoughts could literally be like, oh, I hope I can beat this person and they don't get this promotion. I hope this person fails at what they're doing and I come on top. And it's so crazy how like so many people want to have this set image of what they think holiness is, but there's probably so many things that they're not aware of that if you looked at it from another perspective, it wouldn't be holy, it'd be horrible. So it's quite interesting.
So good.
So I think let's roll into the next clip and then we'll continue this conversation. That's good.
He says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
I love that.
The idea, this word renewal is the thing that really struck me from this clip, because renewal is something that is ongoing. Just by the nature of what it is. Like
so good.
It's not one and done. You don't just you're not suddenly, oh, I got it. I got this. Check. Moving on. It is something that is a constant thing that you have to. You're not out there on your own, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
So it's because if you just think, okay, I got this. I'm ready to go. If you were by yourself, like you were saying, it's not meant to, this is not something, a holy life is not meant to be done, to be pursued on your own in isolation. You can't have, there's no perspective. Like you are only seeing, you have blinders on, you're only seeing you're only thinking about what's happening with you. But you're not actually seeing it for what's really going on. So the idea of like constant pursuing, constantly renewing, constantly seeing how am I showing up, is intended to be done in community. It has to be done in community.
100%. So good.
And in context with others and what's happening, because you have to be thinking, where am I in the process? And it is a constant working through, and in which you're being challenged and held accountable by others, and all of, I mean, it's not, it was the idea of the renewal is like, read it every day, and possibly every hour. Like you can get it. You could be really showing up in a great way in one moment, and then the next, oh my goodness. I mean, like I'll walk home, I'll get home from work after a really, really awful day of work, or at work, I have felt like I've done a great job. Today I didn't react to these people in a way that I usually do, or I'm just like, oh my goodness. So I'm like, oh, I got this. But I come home and then suddenly, because I'm exhausted. And then my kids will come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, I need your attention now. And I'm like, what? No, you don't get it. And suddenly I'm like, boom. So it is ongoing, so hour to hour, right?
Yeah, so good.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, no, that's so true. Yeah. Something I think about when I think about holiness, right? In the book of Peter, in 1 Peter, right? He says this in I think it's chapter 1. He says, we're called to be holy as I, God, am holy, right? And something I think about is when I think about holiness, I think about humans, right? This is kind of my mind tangent, so I'm going to kind of tangent a little bit, right? So God created us in His image, right? And He called us good. And then obviously for us, when Adam sinned in the garden, us as humans were born into sin, right? But when we receive Jesus, the reality is that all of our sin is gone, past, present, future. And so knowing this thought, then when we think about holiness, I know in the Bible in Corinthians it says that Jesus became sin so that he who knew no sin became sin so that we could become the righteousness of God, right? So long story short, when I think about our relationship with God, is that I think, and maybe you guys want to disagree with me here, it's totally okay, but I feel like when God looks at us, he because we've received Jesus into our heart, God doesn't see us, He sees Jesus in us. And because of that, He looks at us as holy. So I think, when that whole tangent, it comes to this place where God sees us as holy, so that's our identity. But then I also think holiness is this process. It's a process of saying, well, I see my identity, but I see where I am right now. And exactly what you're saying about renewal, this is my tangent to connect to renewal, right? Yeah. So because renewal in the same aspect goes with the word repentance, right? And repentance literally just means that we're constantly re-looking back at Jesus, and that process never stops. To repent is like, I've looked this way and I'm like, man, my eyes were off Jesus, I gotta look this way.
Yes.
And when I think about holiness, even in my life, I love the whole analogy of how we as people are like, oh, we were doing so good until here, and then something comes and we lose our minds, But I think what's so okay with that is it shows like, this is a part of my life that it's okay to repent and turn back to God, because it's like, okay, God, I see who you've called me to be, and I know I'm this, but I see this part of my life. Oh God, I still struggle with anger. Help me just process this. God, I still struggle with anxiety. Help me work through this. And to me, I think that process of holiness being like an identity, but then this process, I think I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of beautiful, because it's like, it's supposed, to me, it kind of relieves the pressure off of thinking, like, instead of having to be holy, it's like, oh, hey God, like it just brings God into this conversation of, oh man, God, like, I want to renew my mind again today. God, I was really struggling at work. I had a really hard time today. God, what should I do? How can I turn back to you in this? And to me, I feel like that process is more holy than just saying, oh, I better try harder again.
And almost it's like that's where God is too. It's like suddenly you feel like you're closer. You feel like you feel His presence, and you're like, okay, I'm in this moment. I'm suddenly aware that I cannot do this on my own. So, instead of like putting yourself out there, like, okay, I can do this in my own strength and my own power by myself.
Yes.
Like suddenly I'm like, wait a second, there is no way. I mean, the more that we're thinking, okay, we want to be holy, we want to be like God, we suddenly realize, I mean, if we're honestly thinking about what that is, then we suddenly realize yikes, we cannot do this alone. And then suddenly we're closer to who he is, which is
sure.
all, I mean, it's suddenly interesting when you think about it in that perspective.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I don't know if it's maybe just a little bit different, but I don't know, this part when I love that the last part of this verse talks about renewing of the mind.
Yeah, so good.
Because I just feel like the mind is so powerful with how it can lead us and spiral into you know, it just can get us into trouble with you know, just moving forward day to day and just getting through the day if our mind is not in the right place.
Yeah.
And it talked about being like this idea of a living sacrifice. And I feel like before, when I would just hear those words, living sacrifice, I would just think of something that's like, okay, a sacrifice I have to give up. I have to like get rid of these parts of my life because that's not good. So I'm going to sacrifice and just try to like, I don't know, like starve myself.
Well,
you know what I mean? Of those things.
Yeah.
But for me, the like after reading or like listening to this, the living sacrifice was like living is like the day to day.
Yeah,
it's like
totally
those small things of the sacrifice of it's not about you. So like get out of your own mind and focus on others. So that every day you're living that sacrifice of being there and showing up for those who are around you and all of that. So
I love that.
And actually, it becomes once you're really able to get your mind in that direction, it's like it's not the muscling through. It's not fighting that.
Yes.
It's actually like, this,
right, because
this
then you
is
feel like you're having
actually-
to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it's almost like, okay, God, you are here with me. It is literally walking through that, and it's like, okay, I can't do this on my own. I'm aware of that finally. So it feels almost lighter. It's not this
so good.
constant, okay, I'm in my own strength to make this happen.
So what's so cool about what both of you guys just said, and I was just thinking about this, is that I feel like the fruit of holiness is humility.
Yeah.
Because how funny is it that when you live in the opposite side, right? When you live in the opposite side of saying, well, I've done this, there's this, it's like you're I like the way that Alex described it. You're someone that's just holding onto life like this. And how you guys are describing this, right? It's like when you're doing life off on this, like my own strength, on this thing, on this tangent, I've done A, B, C, D, look how good I've been. Usually people that say that they're living a holy life and doing that, they're not really humble. You know, usually because all of their sense of holiness is based off of what they're
That's
doing.
right.
Yeah. But I love the way that you guys are saying this. When you just have this heart to say, God, I just surrender. God, this is a part of my life that's so broken. I don't know what to do. There's something that as God works through that and sanctifies that, we lose every right to be like, I did this on my own, because it's really just God. So all we have is humility.
That's
you know?
right.
Yeah,
We're like, wow,
that's right.
I'm just a humble person. You know?
So good.
Yeah, it's definitely freeing.
Yeah, right.
You can just let yourself go.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
it's so
exactly.
good. I love that. And I think as you guys were just sharing about, just that thought, something that clicked in my mind, right? And I'm going back to the whole 1 Peter thing. Because it's so funny that Peter, he writes this whole concept in the Bible and he says, be holy as I'm holy. And he challenges like the children of Israel to like, you're a royal priesthood, you're a holy nation, be holy. And I think most people look at that and think how, be holy. What do I need to do to be holy, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at the life of Peter, right? Before Peter was Peter, he was Simon. And then Simon, the name Simon means like a reed tossed to and fro by the wind. And then Jesus comes along, and it's so. I thought the funniest thing, I saw this Instagram like story of how intense Jesus is. Jesus literally comes to the guy's life and he changes his name. It's so intense. Imagine if I come in and I'm like, Mike, you're Joshua now. Right? This is crazy.
Yeah.
But right, Jesus comes, so he talks to this guy named Simon, and Simon means reed, and then he says, hey, you're going to be Peter. Peter means rock, and it's like you see Peter, and when you read through the Gospels, Peter's the total opposite of a rock. He's like back and forth. He's like, I have faith, I don't have faith, I doubt. And then now we're here in 1 Peter, And when you read through First Peter, Peter's calling these people to say, hey, be holy.
Yeah.
But then Peter's story isn't this story. His
Right,
story is
right,
like,
right.
I tried and I failed.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
but
That's right.
something changed in Peter's life where he was like, no, I think holiness is just who God's calling me to be and how that works through my daily life as I surrender to him. You know, and I think, you know, as you guys were talking, it just made me think of that story, how I'm like, you know, when we think about us and wanting to walk and live in holiness, it's like, it's something that Jesus, he has called us to it. You know,
Yes.
he's saying this, he doesn't call us to live normal. Holy means to be set apart. So he wants to live holy, but it's just this holiness of like what you were saying, this living sacrifice daily, just saying, God, how can I walk with you every day? How am I working this out with you?
In Hebrews 12:14, it says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. So, I mean, that idea of we're not just trying to do something on our, we're called to live a holy life because it brings us closer to who Christ is. And it also, it awakens, or it helps others to see who Christ is, hopefully through us, hopefully reflected in us in some way, or at least actually, or at least in the way that we're showing up, hopefully, if we're continuing to pursue this. But it's like you were saying, it's even for Peter, it was an ongoing thing. And if it had not been an ongoing thing, and if it was like, okay, I'm good, my rock is set, I'm good for forever. No, it was an ongoing thing, and we see that, and it's like, and in that, Jesus was in that with him. You know,
it's so
and
good.
so
And I think what's important as well is just going back to that idea of community, is that, you know, you're talking about Peter, and you know, this idea that he was this reed that would go to and fro, but then he changed his name to a rock. And he's the one speaking this because we can identify with not being the rock. As broken humans, we all have things. And when we're in community and we can be humble and we can share our struggles and be vulnerable with others, then others, it gives others permission to I don't know, to like, you know what I mean? To like come through it, or you're helping to pull people because you realize you're not alone.
And so good.
And so much of this holiness is allowing yourself to just be there for others, but you're not expected to be. You're not expected to be holy.
To be
you know
seen
what I mean?
for who you are and what God is doing in your life as well.
Right.
So to be fully seen, you have to be able to be vulnerable and honest with, okay, I am not getting this. I'm not getting this right. And this is where God is meeting me here. And because, I mean, if we all had it together and we were like, okay, got it done, and we were self-righteous and saying, okay, we got this, we're ready to go. Then, I mean, where is that leaving space for people to see what Christ is doing? Because you got this on your own, right? So I think, yes, to be able to see without holiness, no one will see the Lord. I think that for me, that's kind of what it's speaking.
It's so good. Awesome, guys.
Jesus comes and offers himself and pours himself into us and onto us with his grace, his favor, and his love, with his commitment and his faithfulness, even when we are not faithful. And he is holy. So for us to start participating in this holy work, it looks like that we take up that same mindset that Christ has, and then we also give our lives as an offering. We offer our lives in love to the people around us. We offer our lives in service to the church. We offer our life in commitment and generosity. We choose the higher standard. We don't just refrain from doing the bad things, but we step up in faith and we do the right things in every moment. See, this is the thing, is God isn't just called you to be comfortable. He's called you to be holy.
Almost there. On my way. You're kind of just like, what am I supposed to say after that, right?
I know. It was good. And for me, towards the beginning of that, the biggest thing for me was when he said we are still surrounded by God's grace and love and faithfulness, even when we are not faithful.
Yeah, that's so good.
And it's like, for me, I have this constant, and I know it's a false script in my head, but that idea of when I mess up or I didn't do something right, I should have done something another way, it just makes me feel like you blew it. You've fallen from God's graces because you're not living up to the Christian that you say you are.
For sure.
And it's like, so,
Yeah.
and that's, again, going back to that mind, but to remind ourselves here that it's like, even when we mess up and even when we're not faithful, that God is always faithful.
I love that.
And it's like, to me, it's like a big warm hug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
like, oh my gosh, I'm not perfect, and there's no way I will ever get this right. And to remind myself of that. So it reminds me, so 2 Timothy 1:9, it says, he has saved us and called us to a holy life, not because of anything we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. And it's the purpose. And I think going back to the purpose of God's purpose of love and just the way that he's created us to be and show his love, that's how we are becoming holy, is when we embody that. So yeah, this part was part was a good one.
Yeah.
So
and
good.
then when Pastor Alex said, God hasn't just called you to be comfortable, he's called you to be holy. And that part really struck me, because it is a constant dying to yourself.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, we know we're saved by grace. There's nothing we have to do but constantly pursuing Jesus and attempting, trying to be more and more like him. And we will fall short of that.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to say, it's that, to be able to let, I mean, for me, I end up like, I can't, it's hard for me to let go sometimes when, of the failure of, I didn't reach it. I didn't get there.
For sure.
So then I want to beat myself up about not getting there.
Yeah.
So ironically, the dying to self is also letting go of this expectation of this is who I have to be.
Yeah.
Because again, that comes back to like how it comes back to the self, right? It comes back to, I'm going to prove my identity in these ways. I'm going to be this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to show up in this way. But then when I don't, because I am not able to do that, because I am human and I am going to continually need his grace. When I don't, I have to be able to let go of that as well and say, this is where God meets me. This is where I just can let go and rely on him, and trust that, and just live in the knowledge that it is about his grace. And I don't have to do anything to be more loved. I don't have to do anything to be saved. I'm there, but it is a constant just pursuing, living in that, understanding that we will be, not to put myself so much on a pedestal that I have to say, okay, I have to get there. I have to do this thing.
Totally.
I have to, but to die to myself in that way and let go of my need to control, my need to prove, my need, all of these things that is just part
That's so good.
Yeah.
Holiness it's like a paradox. Right?
Yeah.
I think because people don't understand it's a paradox, they try to pick one side or the other. One side being, I need to do things, and the other one being like, well, if God calls us to be holy, then I can do whatever I want. God sees me as holy, But it's this weird paradox where it's like what you guys are saying, like we don't need to do anything more to be more loved by God. More God's would shed more grace on us, all those things. But it's such a funny thing that when it comes to holiness and what God wants for us, like we don't just as He called us to be holy, like we don't be holy to get something from God. But it's
right.
But as God's called us to be holy, it works itself out through our life.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that I think we kind of need to redefine holiness in a couple ways, because I think when the Bible says this, right? Romans 3, it says that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And, when I think about holiness, in this context, that we can't do anything more to make God love us or for him to be more or less faithful to us. I love what you were saying, that even when we're faithless, God is still faithful. So when it comes to our life and we think, oh, well, does that mean I could do whatever I want and God's still gonna be faithful? Well, maybe, but you might regret your life. And I think when I think about that verse in Romans 3, that all sin, I've just realized that holiness isn't, most of the time people think the opposite of holiness is sin. But actually to me, I think the opposite of holiness is being common. Being someone that's, you just settle. You just stop thinking, you just settled. You decided to say, I just don't want to live for more than who I can be or could be. And to me, I feel like that's the opposite of holiness. Or the opposite of holiness is just saying that it's almost like this. Like, let's say God's calling us to be people that have processed our anger issues, have learned to discover patience by trusting in him, have learned to rely on grace and walk with humility, but wisdom and consciousness and confidence, right? If that's the epitome of holiness.
And so, it's again, the dying to the self is like, let me forget myself.
Yes.
Like the more that I can forget that, or live in the truth that it is not about me and my strength, but it is about God and who he is. And if I can live that out in my daily life, in community, in relationship with others, then that is just, like you were saying, it's more than just like what is in my own strength.
Well, hey guys, that is it for our sermon commentary today for Pastor Alex's sermon on holiness. Thank you so much, Mike and Erica, just for joining. Appreciate your thoughts and everything. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.